new Brexit battle. The UK and EU are heading for a legal showdown over Northern Ireland. And there are warnings that violence could return to the country if a solution is not found. This is Roundtable. Hello, I'm Robin Dwyer. The UK has been given until the middle of April to make its next move over Northern Ireland and the trade deal that is behind weeks of rising tensions. The European Union has begun legal action against the UK over its alleged breach of the Northern Ireland Protocol, a key part of the Brexit trade deal. Without EU agreement, the UK decided to delay new sea border checks on goods as set out in the deal. The protocol was agreed because of the unique situation on the island of Ireland. Border infrastructure between the Republic and the North is outlawed under the 1998 Good Friday Agreement, which brought peace and power sharing to Northern Ireland. So goods can't be checked at what is now the border between the UK and the EU. The protocol says they should be checked as they arrive in Northern Ireland from the rest of Great Britain, creating a border in the Irish Sea. But the sea border has angered unionist communities in Northern Ireland, who reject any idea that they should follow different rules to the rest of the UK. Northern Ireland's Deputy First Minister Michelle O'Neill said earlier this month, "I think what the British government today have done demonstrates extreme bad faith and leads to even more uncertainty for us here in terms of the implications and the outworking of what is the hardest possible Brexit." There's now renewed tension between communities that were attacking each other just a generation ago. And another fight could now play itself out in the courts between the UK and EU. Time then to introduce our guests. And joining us from Dublin, we have Barry Andrews, who's a member of European Parliament for Dublin. In Belfast, we have Katie Hayward, who's Professor of Political Sociology at Queen's University Belfast and a Senior Fellow of the UK in a Changing Europe Initiative. And in Oxford, UK, Stephen Wetherill, who's Professor of European Law at the University of Oxford. Thank you very much indeed, all of you, for joining us on the programme today. So I want to start with you, Katie, if I may, because I think we need to set out how we got to this point and just why the Northern Ireland Protocol is such a sensitive issue.
Yes, well, obviously the UK leaving the EU means that you would have harder borders between the UK and the EU. And right from the very beginning in the withdrawal negotiations, both sides agreed that they wanted to avoid a hard border on the island of Ireland and respect, therefore, the Good Friday Belfast Agreement, which changed relationships on the island of Ireland and between Britain and Ireland in order to bring peace to Northern Ireland. This proved a complicated matter. And after much sort of contentious negotiation, we ended up with the Protocol on Ireland, Northern Ireland in the withdrawal agreement, which basically sets out arrangements to ensure that you avoid that hard border on the island by moving the key elements of checks and controls to the Irish Sea, so most particularly on goods moving from Britain into Northern Ireland.
And Stephen, as this post-Brexit deal was negotiated, this was a sticking point for a long time, wasn't it? And what we've ended up with is very much a compromise.
Yes, very much so. As Katie has explained, there wasn't a problem before Brexit because the United Kingdom and Ireland and the rest of the European Union followed the same rules on market regulation. As soon as the United Kingdom leaves the European Union and chooses to go its own way in terms of market regulation, then it is inevitable that there will be a border somewhere. And the compromise, as you rightly put it, is that that border shall exist between Northern Ireland and Great Britain, which harms the United Kingdom's internal market by putting up a barrier between Northern Ireland and Great Britain as far as trade is concerned, which is a compromise where the United Kingdom has sacrificed something, but the European Union has sacrificed something here as well because it relies on a third country, the United Kingdom, to police its de facto external border, which is between Northern Ireland and Great Britain.
And Barry, you represent Ireland, Dublin, in the European Parliament. So how, as a person who's based in Ireland, how has that been received where you are?
Well, you know, Ireland and the UK joined the EEC, as it then was in 1973, at one of the toughest times in Irish-British relations. And from 1998 onwards, when the Good Friday Agreement was signed, we entered effectively a golden age of Irish-British relations. Over the last 20 years, it's really been extraordinarily positive, both in economic and social terms. But the Queen came to Ireland and the Irish president went to the UK. And frankly, Brexit fractured that. So we have been in the last 4 or 5 years trying to anticipate what might happen to the Irish economy as a result of Brexit. So there's been a huge amount of diversification going on in Irish business. For example, there used to be just 12 crossings on the sea between Ireland and Europe every week in January 2020. Now there are 42 sailings per week directly to the European continent. So there is a lot of change happening in the Irish economy as a result of all of this. We don't fully know what's going to happen, but what we do know is that the protocol is the only option to both protect the integrity of the EU single market and to protect the peace process in Ireland. And imposing a border on the island of Ireland would simply be disastrous, both politically and economically.
And one thing that everybody agreed should be held sacrosanct in formulating this protocol was upholding the Good Friday Agreement. And this is what the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson had to say about it in early March.
I think the most important thing about the protocol is that it should guarantee the peace process and the Good Friday Agreement, which we all believe in, and everybody and Ireland and the UK and Northern Ireland has worked so hard to achieve. And there's got to be a balance and symmetry in that. And what we want to ensure is that the protocol upholds the wishes of all communities, of both communities, and has the consent of both. So there's got to be an east-west consent to what's going on, as well as north-south. So that's what we're doing. We're just trying to make sure that that's built into it.
So, Stephen, how large does this feature in the EU's mind, do you think?
Well, it's important to the European Union principally because the United Kingdom and the European Union have entered into agreements, which are international treaties, relating to the withdrawal of the United Kingdom from the European Union. So it's fundamentally important to the European Union to see the obligations which have been undertaken by the United Kingdom are adhered to faithfully. In the specific terms of the Irish Protocol, that's important for upholding peace on the island of Ireland. More generally, the European Union treats it as fundamentally important to the protection of the rule of law, that the law be upheld. So the Good Friday Agreement and the protocol in the General Withdrawal Agreement need to be respected in order to maintain fidelity to the rule of law.
And in Northern Ireland itself, the perception of some is that the protocol is not enhancing the stability. Here's First Minister Arlene Foster. There's great unease within the unionist and loyalist community. I hear it every single day. That's dangerous when people think they're being sidelined and not listened to. I think that is something the Dublin government need to recognise, and the government in London as well. So, Katie, do you agree with that assessment from Arlene Foster?
Well, it's certainly very true that the situation in Northern Ireland is a fragile one. And the whole peace process in Northern Ireland has been based on cross-border cooperation and integration, north and south on the island of Ireland, and of course east-west as well, and that British-Irish relationship is really key. I think a difficulty has been that, of course, the protocol is a compromise, and it does entail hardening the Irish sea border, and as a natural consequence of that, unionists do feel concerned because they feel as though Northern Ireland is being placed in a different relationship with Britain. And of course, that's the fundamental logic of unionism, that the relationship between Northern Ireland and Britain is essential. And it's really an essential part of their identities as well. And certainly there is fundamental sense of polarisation and unease in Northern Ireland at the moment because there is a sense of us having the sea border, if you like, as an alternative to the land border. Whereas in reality, the situation, of course, is much more complicated than that. Ultimately, what we're looking for and what we need is a very close and trusting UK-EU relationship, just as the trusting relationship that developed between Britain and Ireland in the lead up to the Good Friday Agreement and afterwards has been really fundamental to the peace here.
Barry Andrews, Casey talked of a concern there. Do you think there is a genuine concern?
Yes, I've been speaking to many people in Northern Ireland. From where I'm sitting in Dublin and in the European Parliament in Brussels, sometimes that can be forgotten, and there are sensitivities in both communities in the north of Ireland. But the protocol has triggered very particular concerns among the unionist community, and it's absolutely essential that we in the EU and in Dublin are sensitive to those concerns. And I have made proposals to the European Parliament that there would be what I've called better connective tissue between Belfast and Brussels, because Northern Ireland is in the single market for goods. There will be many proposed regulations, directives and changes to EU law that will affect Northern Ireland, that will impact Northern Ireland. And the earlier in that process that Northern Ireland can x-ray the implications of those proposals, the better, because ultimately the Northern Ireland Assembly will have to vote on the protocol in about 4 years' time. So that's one of the reasons why I'm pushing this agenda. It's based on the concerns that have been genuinely expressed among the unionist community in Northern Ireland.
And the EU is suggesting it might take legal action over what it says are breaches of the protocol. Stephen, how far do you think it might go with this?
Well, there are two routes on the table from the European Union side, one concerning the invocation of the arbitration process with regard to the violation of the obligation of good faith by the United Kingdom, and also separately to the more concrete violations of the protocol involving the UK's failure to respect the obligations which it has undertaken pursuant to the protocol, which the Commission has initiated. Now, those procedures are not quick. They would take months, even years to unfold. And the aspiration on the EU side is that they should become redundant, because what the EU really wants is for the United Kingdom to abide by the obligations which it has undertaken under the protocol. So I think what the European Union wants is to use the threat of litigation as a means to encourage a political resolution of this matter, involving the United Kingdom living up to what it's promised to do under the protocol.
But Katie, do you think that they genuinely are breaches, or maybe more a difference of opinion in the way this protocol is interpreted?
Yes, I mean, you're right. There's been a very different interpretation from both the UK and the EU about what the protocol is and its significance and its implications. Right from the beginning, the UK has been downplaying what it meant, particularly for trade across the Irish Sea, whereas the EU has been stressing that the integrity of its single market is at stake here and that it has to be implemented in full and with pretty heavy consequences. So ultimately, we do need to see some kind of coming together of opinion in this matter. I mean, it is quite clear, and the UK was quite straightforward about it in saying it is taking unilateral action on a matter that has, by the terms of the agreement, have to be agreed jointly with the EU through the UK-EU Joint Committee. The UK government is saying, well, it needed to do this because if it hadn't acted unilaterally in this way, or indeed hadn't acted at all, then there would have been graver problems, and we would have seen more serious consequences in terms of empty supermarket shelves, for example. So it's saying its action was necessary. But of course, the EU would retort and say, well, you should have agreed it with us in advance before taking this unilateral action.
But Barry, we should also point out that the EU was talking about invoking the Northern Ireland Protocol when it came to the vaccine exports disagreement, let's call it.
Yeah, well, that happened in January for about 3 hours and was walked back very speedily. So it wasn't even triggered. It was simply something that was floated. And it wouldn't be fair to draw an analogy between that, which was an administrative proposal which never took effect, with a deliberate decision, as the European Union would see it, of breaching international law, which is what triggered the infringement proceedings. But happily, there was a meeting of the specialised committee under the Joint Committee last week, and it seems that there was a slightly better mood. And I understand that a roadmap is now expected from the UK side to allow for proper implementation of the protocol. So I didn't necessarily disagree with the steps that the UK took in extending the so-called grace periods, but I would agree with the characterization that it was a reasonable thing done in an unreasonable way. But so it's important that we get on with ratifying the trade and cooperation agreements in the European Parliament so that all the mechanisms that are contained therein can help to make sure that we improve EU-UK relations more generally, because there are so many other moving parts apart from the protocol that need to be built on to develop EU-UK relations into a partnership and not a rivalry.
And Katie, I want to go back to your point about empty supermarket shelves, because I wonder just how this new agreement has started affecting life in Northern Ireland.
Well, we certainly saw it at the beginning of January, with the end of the transition period and the protocol coming into play. And there were several things behind that, not least of which was the COVID-19 pandemic, and also the fact that we got decisions on what was required for implementing the protocol. We got those decisions very late, so there was a lack of preparedness there. The grace periods that were agreed between the UK and the EU in mid-December were crucial to enabling the movement of goods into Northern Ireland. And they will, when they come to an end, they will have a significant impact, because at the end of that, the expectation is that Northern Ireland business will have adjusted considerably to the new environment, most particularly in sourcing goods no longer from GB, but directly from the EU.
So, Stephen, you talked about two possible outcomes from the EU potentially taking legal action. What do you think it will do, and what would be the right one?
I think that the European Union wants the route of litigation to be a kind of background hum to this. It doesn't expect this to be resolved through litigation. It wants it to be resolved by consensual processes whereby the UK and the EU find a way through the current disagreements. And as Barry has mentioned, there was a meeting of the Specialised Committee last week, which by all accounts had a much more congenial, positive mood to it. So I would very much hope that the route of litigation will fade into the background as political consensus reigns. The one point I'd really like to insist on, though, is that the protocol's not perfect. Nobody thinks the protocol's perfect, but the protocol's not the problem here. The problem here is Brexit in the first place. As soon as Brexit has occurred, it was necessary to cater for the divergence in regulatory approaches to put a border somewhere. That was never going to be perfect. That was never going to keep everybody happy. The choice of the protocol is to put the border between Northern Ireland and Great Britain. A perfect choice? No, but a necessary choice.
And Barry, as Stephen says there, they do have to put a border somewhere. Do you think this is the best solution that could have been come up with?
Well, it is, I think, the only option. Frankly, there are two ports that are impacted, Larne and Belfast, and that's where the effective checks have to take place. The alternative is a 500-kilometre border on the island of Ireland between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. And it goes without saying that policing that is a much more difficult task. There are 300 crossings on that border, as opposed to two ports in Northern Ireland. So I think from a practical point of view, it is the only solution. And I think the sensitivities with regard to what has been achieved on the Good Friday Agreement and the improvement in Irish-British relations that I described earlier on would all be put at risk by reimposing the border and all of the checks that would go with it on the island of Ireland. So hopefully it will bed down, and we in Dublin have had to adapt to Brexit since January the 1st. There were no grace periods for imports from the UK, and so we've been able to manage that. And I think with political will, it can be managed in Belfast. The difference, of course, is the political sensitivities in Belfast, which weren't present in Dublin. So it can be done. And I believe it's the only option for guaranteeing the Good Friday Agreement.
And Katie, what do you think? You're based in Northern Ireland, but do you think that Northern Ireland had enough say in this, the creation of this protocol, which is so deeply affects where you are, but perhaps some people, I believe, think that they didn't have enough say in the actual creation of it?
Yes, I mean, if I just come back on something Barry says there, I think we do need to recognise that this is affecting internal UK trade. So the scale of the adjustment for Northern Ireland to adjust its trade with Britain is far greater than it is for the Republic of Ireland to do so. And absolutely, Stephen is right. This is fundamentally a consequence of Brexit. So it's sort of worth putting it in that context. I mean, looking forward, essentially all of this will take time, and that UK-EU relationship through the proper mechanisms will be important. But yes, you're right, Northern Ireland didn't have a direct say in the design of the protocol, and it doesn't have a direct say now in the decisions that are being made about its implementation. So there is no automatic seat for Northern Ireland elected representatives at the UK-EU Joint Committee. There's no automatic place even for Northern Ireland civil servants in the specialised committee. So you can see how there's a concern about a democratic deficit there, and Barry's suggestions about what might be done to meet those some of those gaps is very welcome. Any action on that is necessary to help reassure people in Northern Ireland that their voices and concerns are being heard.
And Stephen, I want to go back to your point about this thing being a compromise. We've seen it's only been in place for a few months, but there's already been quite a lot of give and take about it. Do you think it can last?
I think an essential precondition to it lasting is that the leading figures in the United Kingdom government really take ownership and take responsibility for what they decided in the withdrawal agreement and in the protocol in particular. I mean, Boris Johnson in particular has frequently contradicted what was agreed by the UK government in the protocol. So Brandon Lewis, the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, has denied the existence of a border, although he's recently recanted. Dominic Raab, only a couple of weeks ago, claimed that it was the European Union that was improperly demanding the existence of a border between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. That's the very agreement that the UK government had itself made. So the protocol is unstable. The protocol is not perfect, but it is necessary that both sides, most of all the recalcitrant United Kingdom government, accept what is in the protocol and get on to de-dramatize it and try and encourage all those involved to find a way to make it work.
Barry Andrews, do you think that some of the rhetoric by Boris Johnson is in actual fact trying to play to his own supporters or potential supporters with local elections coming up?
As you say, there are elections coming up in May, and I think that will obviously colour the way in which the political rhetoric will flow in the next while. But it's really important, and the Irish Taoiseach, the Irish Prime Minister, has consistently encouraged people to dial it down and try to leave the space for dialogue. And we've learned over the many years that progress on Northern Ireland and the peace process does depend on a more mature approach to political dialogue. And trying to point score is inevitably going to lead to problems and divisions within communities. What has emerged, I think, in Northern Ireland electorally is a third way, where parties that are where polarization has not been as strong. So we also have elections in Northern Ireland in May of next year, and that'll be an important signpost for the protocol. But initially, I think if we get through these elections, that will be there will, I think, at the other side of that, there'll be more opportunities for progress to be made.
And Katie Hayward, you told us about the situation in Northern Ireland, how it's been since the start of this year. Do you think there is a better solution out there that would better serve the needs of the people?
I don't think there is a viable alternative to the protocol. I mean, there were, this is the third version, I think, that we had of a protocol in the withdrawal agreement. And it was obviously trying to balance the priorities of the UK and the EU through Brexit, alongside that really difficult matter of avoiding a hard border. And so if you look at technical arrangements or alternative arrangements for avoiding a hard border, they simply don't exist. They're not feasible, and they don't guarantee the kind of security that the EU would be looking for its single market, and of course for the UK too. So no, there is no alternative really at this stage, and it's although the unionists are calling for this protocol to be scrapped, which is a worrying matter, the truth is that the UK and the EU have signed up to this international agreement, and everything really now depends on making it work.
Well, let's just, as a final thought, return to this potential legal battle. And Stephen, whether you think it won't take place, but what would happen if the EU does sue Britain and it won?
It is ultimately possible that financial sanctions could be imposed on the United Kingdom, and it would be legally, it would clearly be the case that the United Kingdom would be responsible to pay the sums which were awarded against it. That would become extremely politically awkward because there's no obvious way to enforce a judgment against the United Kingdom if the United Kingdom refused to comply with it, because although the procedures under the protocol resembled those that apply for the enforcement of European Union law within the EU, and they're translated to apply to the UK ultimately is not a member state of the EU. So the ultimate enforcement of any award against the UK would be very difficult to achieve. But really, everyone is hoping that it wouldn't get to that kind of stage, because there would be such a level of bitterness involved that the matter not being resolved politically prior to that stage, that things would be in a very dark place.
Okay, I want to say thank you very much to all of my guests for joining me today on the programme. Barry Andrews, Katie Hayward and Stephen Weatherall. Thank you. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Search for TRT World Roundtable. But for now, from me and all the team here, goodbye and thank you for watching.